Howdy. Welcome to our first tutorial where I'll show you how to make this nicely looking car suspension in Blender and then import it in and rig it in Unity and use it in your game. This footage is from our upcoming game, American Cars and Guns. You can wishlist it on Steam if I already have a link in a comment below. And this is how we're gonna do all our tutorials. I will make a tutorial so you can follow it and make it yourself, or you can buy it on an asset store, the asset that does exactly what I will present in the tutorial, but of course it will be done in a nicer way with more details and should be super simple to use. So let's start by making this suspension model in Blender. I'm using Blender 3 even though 4 is available. We'll make a very simple suspension, like just 2 cylinders and a spiral. Much nicer version is available in an asset store, link in the comments below. And to see how to draw a suspension and learn about Blender, there is a very good tutorial, link is in the comments below or here up in the top right corner. You can watch that tutorial. You will learn a lot about Blender, which reminds me I have to set this thing so you can see what I'm pressing in Blender. The most important when you follow Blender tutorial is watch in which mode the user is. So we will start by making a super simple suspension with just a cylinder. Scale this. It will be very large, so I'm scaling it down, even though we can do it later. Scale it in a Z. And I'll move, oops, I want to move it up because the spiral will be created at origin. Shift it to duplicate it and then scale that guy, move it up, and that's pretty good for our suspension. I'm going to add a spiral. So with what we are going to do in Blender, we will draw the objects, which will be a mesh, and then we will add bones for rigging, and we will assign some weights to those meshes, vertices, according to the bones. So when we move the bones, the meshes should move accordingly. You will see in a second. Now I'm going to add a spiral, but you will not have this if you don't install additional package. So curve and then spiral Archimedean. It comes from here. If you go to preferences and add-ons, add curve extra objects. This will give you those curves, and you can also import Rigify. Otherwise you will not have the same menu as I have for the bones. And if you want to install this thing that shows you the buttons, I think it's some kind of a GitHub that you have to install. I don't remember. Okay, let's add a spiral. So curve Archimedean. It will show up here and you will have this menu initially. I don't know how to get this menu back once it is gone and it gets away when I click something. So I will reduce the radius. I will make like 8 turns and then I will adjust the height. Come on. Okay, this is very sensitive when you are at a certain scale. And then I will adjust the curve geometry. We can make it a bit thicker, something like this, and it's open, so we will fill the curves. And now when I click here, I don't know how to get that menu again, or if it's even possible. Now we are almost ready to add the bones and rigify this, but first we need to turn this object to convert it to mesh. You see how it changed from that spiral thing, now it's a mesh. Okay, now we need to add the bones. They will appear here. So it's armature, single bone, and it appears here. And to be able to see it, I'll put it in front, so now it's visible. I'll scale it down, even though I think the size of the bone doesn't matter too much. And now we want to add another bone. So pay attention, if I'm in the object mode, there is an armature here. This is our bone, let's call it top bone. And if you add another bone while you are in the object mode, it will add another armature. That's not what we want. I'll just cancel this, Control Z. So you have to be, I select the bones first, then I go into the edit mode, and now I add another bone. It's added here, so let's scale it down. I want this bone here, and I want it turned 180 degrees, so I press R, X, and I type 180, so it's exactly the opposite way. So to assign the weights automatically, we will select those three meshes, 2 cylinders and a spiral, and make bones their parent, which will offer us automatic weight assignment. You can also do weight painting and all that stuff. I don't know how to do that. It's very annoying for me. So I made a trick. I move this when I'm doing assignment. I'm moving this away, and I'll move the bones away. So when we do automatic assignment, I want this part, this cylinder, to be affected only by this bone, and this cylinder to be affected only by this bone. And then for spiral, I want something in between. This bone further down. Okay, that should be it. Later we can assemble all these back once the weights are assigned. So now I'm selecting this cylinder, spiral, holding shift, this, and the last selection is the bones. And now I press Ctrl P with automatic weights. So now the weights are assigned. You can see they become part of the armature. But to see if I got what I wanted, I select the bones and then the object, let's say this one, and weight paint. And it's completely red because this bone is selected. If I select this bone, it should be completely blue. So it's completely unaffected by this bone and totally moves as this bone moves. This is what we wanted. The same thing for the other cylinder. Select bones first, then the object, and then you have a weight paint. That's good. Select this bone. It's red. The most important is, of course, how it affected the spiral. And I think it's pretty good. This bone is obviously selected because of the colors. I'll explicitly select it. So we want this part to be completely red and then start turning colors, and this to be completely blue, but only at the very, very end. If I select the other bone, it should be the other way around. To test if this is what we wanted, select the bones, and there is a pose mode. And then I can select this bone, press GZ, and I move it. You see it moves the cylinder and moves the spiral. That's pretty good. If you don't like it this way, you can do different assignments. This is my trick to put it at different locations, and then I see how it turns out. Or if you have a better way, it's up to you. Now I'm going to assemble this back. I go to object mode. I'll assemble it back. I have to be, okay. And that is our model. I will save it. There we go. I already have opened Unity project where we're going to use it. Copy. So we're going to save this as a Blender file. Blender model, let's call it for Blender. I'll put explicitly the version. Okay, one thing I didn't do, I select all and then pressing Ctrl A, we do the scale. So now all the scales should be 1 when imported to Unity. I'll save it. Let's go to Unity. This is my test scene. I already have a car prepared and some terrain for testing, but this is our Blender shock absorber we just made. Let's see how it looks like. Oh, it's perfect size. That's really funny. Never happens to me. Okay, so we already have a shock absorber we can use, but we need to rig it in Unity. So rigging means doing something with the bones so they can do some kind of advanced movement, and then it will be reflected on a mesh. A great tutorial about rigging in Unity is from the legendary brackets. The link is in the comments below, and you can click here in upper right corner. I'll do one more thing. You see how it looks like. You can do in Blender, you can select the cylinder and then shade smooth. Also the other cylinder, shade smooth, and we save it. And as long as this is a prefab, it should be affected right away. But I don't want this to be prefab like this. What I will do, I will unpack completely. Okay, so this is our model. You can see the bones, top bone and the bone. I didn't rename this one. Okay, now we have two different names, that's fine. What you will need in Unity, this is Unity 2023 Package Manager. If you go to Unity Registry, Rig, Animation Rigging, this is what you need. And once you have a model, you can click, you will have this option, Animation Rigging. You can do bone renderer setup, which will draw you the bones. I don't know how useful that is. I definitely don't need the armature, but it shows you the bones. You can see it somehow. I can increase it, but okay. They are somewhat visible, but I know where the bones are. I don't need this. What you need, what we're gonna do, basically we're gonna do that one bone always points to the other bone, no matter where the bone goes, because rigging in Blender, that other tutorial that I showed you, if you go here in a pose mode, and then I try to move this bone, it's fine when we go up and down, right? But if I go left and right, this is not how it should behave, right? Okay, so this we will resolve in Unity. You can do that in Blender, but we are not interested in doing things in Blender. We need it to be done in Unity. So how you do it, it's called inverse kinematics, and we'll use the, I think it's called multipoint aim constraint, because you basically make constraint. And to add this, you need to animation rig setup, which adds something here. And then I add an empty object here, top to bottom. So this will point the top bone to the bottom bone, and then we'll do it the other way around. That is the trick that will make it work. So now you need to do inverse multi-aim constraint. This is how it's called. There are different things you can do. So this just adds a script, and we could probably done this script ourselves, but since it's already, as I said, it will turn one bone in the direction of the other. The way we draw things in Blender, this should be Y and this should be X. Otherwise everything will look very weird, you'll know it right away. So we have constraint object, which will be our one bone, and source, where it is aiming, it will be another bone. So that's it. And now we'll do it the other way around. I'll just copy this. And I will reverse the roll of the bone. So this will be a top bone, and this will be a bottom bone. What happens now, let's save this, not to lose it. Of course, if you move the bones here, this is what will happen. The same as in Blender. But when the scene is active, you will see this rigging will become active. We don't want to see the car, but we can be in a scene. And now we get exactly behavior that we wanted. Bam, bam, bam. It can do that. It can go the other way around. The best part is you can move the other bone, right? So it is a very nice suspension thing. But of course, something needs to move the bone. And for that, we will make a very simple script. Let me show you how I prepared a car, very simple car that can drive. It has a wheel colliders and wheel visuals, and obviously the wheels move as we drive over bumpy terrain. But the structure of the car, you can see it, how I structured it. There are, of course, wheel colliders. And what I call a wheel visual is actually several objects where only this is a visual, right? This is front left. So I will use this object only to move wheel up and down, while I'll use this object for rotation. Usually you use only one, but here, because of the suspension, I need two. You will see in a second. And our car script is very simple. What it does, once it opens, so the car script, it has wheel colliders, and then I call this visual, but this should be called like vertical movement, and the other is for rotation. So every update, I get the world pose of the wheel collider, front left wheel collider. I get its position and quaternion for rotation. But then I adjust position of the top object in a hierarchy, and the second one, the rotation, which then in effect moves the wheel as it should. Okay, let's position the shock absorber a little bit more normal position. And maybe rotate it so you can do it whatever you want. Okay, that's our shock absorber. And now I have a script for this shock absorber. I will not write a script here. I will just use the script, which should be somewhere here. Shock absorber script. So you can see script, and I'll explain what we are. It's very simple script. So what I will do with this, I will add another empty object and call it control point. And I want it to be exactly here. Now accidentally it is here because this is 0, 0. If it's not, move it here where one of the bones is. And what I want to do, I want to move the control point and then move bone, that bone, which is a, I think, top bone, is it? Yeah, that's a top bone, according to that control point. But I don't want to move control point explicitly. You can do that if you have, for example, some frame that needs to modify, and then you will be moving it differently than a wheel, then you can do it explicitly. But for now, we will use the wheel movement, and particularly wheel movement up and down, and I will just make control point a child of that object. We'll just change the parent of control point. It will not remain on the shock absorber. It will get a different parent, and then whatever parent does, control point will do. And you can see it in a script. We will assign control point. We will assign it a parent, which will be that wheel movement up and down, and which bone should be moved according to movement of this point. So at the very beginning, we just change the parent of the control point, and then in update, we move the bone as the control point moves, and control point moves because the parent moves. Okay, it will be much more clear once I do it. So we assign shock absorber script here. Control point is this one. And of course, shock absorber should be part of the car, right? We want it to move with the car. And control point parent to assign. It will be front left visual because that is the vertical movement. This is like misnomer. Okay, so that's what I mean by that. And then the bone to move is whichever is that other bone. It's top bone. Here, top bone. Okay, and that should be it. Let's see how it behaves. And that's exactly what we wanted. Notice, you can see it now that control point is gone. It is assigned here, and its parents is this visual. Notice if I would make a different parent, this one, this is what would happen, right? So you definitely don't want, we don't want that. That's why we had to separate rotation and vertical movement. So that's it. You can make this thing look a little bit nicer. Black chrome, right? So we can make this thing black. we can make this thing chrome. Now let's make it nice and green. What? Come on. We'll make it a shiny green metal, but why is not changing? Okay. Yeah. So you get a very nice suspension. And now we can duplicate it, and that will basically end our tutorial. I can duplicate it, and if my car is done right, I should just change the signs. Of course, we need to assign different things here. I mean, the parent, just the parent has to be different. So this is a front right visual. Okay, and then we can copy both of them and move them back with no rotation. So this is a rear left, and this guy is rear right. Oh, that's right. Yeah. Rear left, rear right. Yeah, that's it. That's our car. And now if we do it, I'll need to move a camera a little bit. Main camera, that's the side right. Yeah. Okay. And now if you drive a car, you can see a nice suspension moving. As I said, much nicer version is available on the asset store. If you like this channel, share, like, subscribe, and come back for more. I have another video where I'll show you all the systems in my new game that I think are worth sharing and making packages. But this is the first one because that's really simple to make, and I hope you enjoyed it. See you. Bye.